Today is the first of at least 3 classes. I've got 3 areas to cover in this, and this is, well, when we're looking at resilience, probably the biggest single thing that somebody can do is a mindfulness practice. And the reasons for that are that the benefits are quite significant across a lot of different levels, and it's something that you don't need any external support for. You don't need any people to help you. You don't need any activity. You can build your resilience on your own, essentially. And so that's, one of the reasons that I promote mindfulness-based resilience so heavily. Of the 3 areas that I've identified where mindfulness builds resilience, interoception's the first and most obvious, and it is a foundation for the other 2 as well. Then the next thing is mindfulness enables us to neutralize unhelpful thoughts. And that isn't just by using the noting unhelpful thought pattern practice. It also just happens. And we can develop this capacity to intervene in our thoughts just by following the breath, and I'll explain how all that works. And the final one is a thing called witness consciousness, which I've covered a couple of times before, but I haven't explained it in the context of resilience. And what witness consciousness is the awareness that you're the awareness that's aware of your experience. And we'll come to that in an entire class. And in that class, I'll also explain how it builds our resilience. For today is mindfulness.Interoception and resilience. So when we sit down and begin our first mindfulness practices, for the vast majority of people, it consists of sitting down and noticing the breath. For a large group as well, it's sitting down and noticing the body. So if anybody has done a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, for example, the first 4 weeks is largely focused on the body scan. And what the body scan is a process of moving our awareness through all of the different parts of the body. And what we're doing there is strengthening something called interoception. And so what interoception is it's the sense of the internal state of the body. And it's an incredibly complicated thing. If you took 10 people, what you would see is a spectrum of ability to identify and interpret sensations in the body. Everything from someone who has difficulty doing that to somebody who lives their life through the sensations in the body. It's something that grows all of the time that we do meditation, and it grows subconsciously, so we're not actually aware of it while it's happening. What happens is we become aware of the effects afterwards. So let's take an effect of high interoception. An effect of high interoception is an awareness of your emotional states, all of them. And this doesn't necessarily mean that we're able to accurately interpret them. So here's a thing that we all know, right? Which is that women are more in touch with their emotions than men, okay? And because of that, they're actually more in touch with their physiology. They're more aware of their physiology. And there's mountains of evidence to prove this. And in fact, we all know it anyway, right? The inability to be aware of emotional sensations in the body is a thing called alexithymia. There's actually a clinical concept of male alexithymia. We are taught to suppress our emotions in a lot of cultures, men. I'll just take a slight step to the side and give you a bit of cultural information, which is there's a bit of gaslighting going on here, and I'll explain how. And it is all about, human relations, men and women. Anger is not perceived as being emotional, so therefore men aren't emotional creatures, right? Anger is also an acceptable emotion. So it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to be sad. Yeah, so if you're angry at work and you're frustrated, your manager will get you in the following day. He'll say, look, don't do that anymore because it'll wind people up. Get back out there. So that's kind of, right, don't do that again. Otherwise we'll have to give you a room on your own or something, and that's it. Somebody bursts into tears, they're sent home. If the same person sitting there and they're crying all day, they're sent home. Yeah. So anger's acceptable and sadness isn't. Which is the most destructive for other people? Anger by a mountain, because it's usually either directed explicitly or implicitly at another person. Okay. As men, what we're told is anger's okay, but you can't be sad in public. And so what happens is you suppress your tears, and what happens then is you become what's known as repressed, which is a state of continuous suppression of our emotional state. And that's seen as good, because when difficult things happen, you're being stoic and you become an inspiration. Right. So that's the cultural perspective, and what that does is that interferes in our ability to become aware of our internal sensations and process them adequately, which is really unhelpful for our resilience. When we first start off meditating and we start by noticing the breath, we are actually opening ourselves up to physical sensations we do. When we do that, we're just doing it indirectly. We're not saying, okay, let's sit down and notice how we feel today. How do we feel? No, we don't do that, because more like 80% of the people that come into the room are going to feel rubbish, and they're not going to come back, and they're also not going to carry on in this process of allowing themselves to experience all of the sensations related to a lot of difficult emotions, related to a lot of difficult experiences. So what happens is we focus on the breath, or we focus on very sharp focus of parts of the body. And when we do that, what happens is our sense of our inner experience grows in the background. And then bit by bit, we become more familiar and comfortable with all of these feelings. So the more you meditate, the more this is happening in the background. And one of the reasons that this needs to happen is this. When you discover that something's true or not true in your personal experience, whatever happens out there, it doesn't really matter. It's what's going on inside you. And it's your relationships, your connection to other people, your experience that matters. And what you want to know is you want to know the truth of your inner experience. What you're doing all the time, every single moment of every day, is testing your mental model of the world. And if there's a difference between your mental model of the world and what you experience, you're going to suffer discomfort. So, for example, if my mental model was a mental model that made it uncomfortable for me to speak in public, and I carry on teaching meditation, it's going to be an anxiety-ridden experience. Yeah. And that's the same for everyone, because there's the way that I see me is not in a way that I'm comfortable with how I perceive other people will perceive me. So there's a tension there, and there's discomfort. And that's why, for a huge proportion of people, speaking in public is something that makes them uncomfortable. And being able to be aware of that and processing it, and all that processing consists of, is acknowledging the feeling, being aware that that feeling is arising because of this tension between how I perceive myself and how I believe others perceive me, and that in some way is unsatisfactory. It's a learning process. That experience is a learning process. It's a learning process about how I feel when I do this. And then I multiply that by my entire experience. Everything I do, everyone I meet, every interaction I have, there's this feedback process. And in here is is it right? Is it a right feeling? That's what we need to tap into to grow. Does this feel right? You may not be aware of it, but that's what's going on all the time. Yeah, this is at the heart of Antonio Damasio's concept of the somatic process of the self. This is how we become who we are. We're constantly testing experiences, and in us is the rightness or wrongness of that experience for us. And it's a feeling. To be able to do that, what do? We sit there and notice the breath. It's a thing that they call the body barometer. It's telling us if something is right, if it fits in with how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the world. Does it align with our mental model, yes or no? Yeah. And that also allows you to navigate your mental model. So every time you interact with someone, you're tapping into how you feel. And so if there's something not right about them, you'll notice. And after a while, you get quite good at this. And you notice pretty much instantly. And it's not whether they're good or bad people. It's whether they're aligned with your perception of someone whose energy, and it's useful to use this word energy because it's just a fuzzy sense of what somebody brings to an interaction. Is their energy right for you? And then if it's not, you can investigate that. So you can ask them a load of impertinent questions and see what happens. And then you're building relationships. And then you might discover something about them that makes you, now I get it. When I first started teaching, I would take on, this was a huge capacity I developed to build boundaries, what I would do is take on the stress of my students in my courses. If I was running a course on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, the stress level would be phenomenal. So if you were a load of stressed out people, you'd be in here, and I'd be absorbing your stress. I've learned how to regulate and mediate that now. And one of the problems is that boundary will break down depending on who it is we're interacting with. So any mums will 100% absorb the entire suffering of their children, and many dads, and live it and breathe it. I remember one of the first really insightful things that I heard from a student was, I can only be as happy as my least happy child. Resilience enables you to regulate that experience. We're so deeply connected to them emotionally that we experience our version of their suffering. They might not be suffering all that much, relatively speaking, but we're doing it for them. Irrespective of whatever strategies that you apply, and I run some strategies and teach some strategies, and everybody's different. It's just a matter of finding the ones for you. This isn't about the strategies. This is actually about the underlying process. And the underlying process is actually you becoming aware of your internal state, incrementally more, bit by bit. And the other thing that happens, and we'll go straight into a meditation when I've said this, is that this is like exposure therapy. So if you're frightened of spiders, like I am, I've got arachnophobia, no one in the world is kinder to spiders than me now. I'm applying super kindness to the spiders. The garden studio where I work has a full complement of daddy longlegs and house spiders. And we get on like a house on fire. And even to the point where I don't want to throw them out. Well, there are never any flies in there, so and there are never any other sort of insects other than spiders. So I think they're surviving okay, you know. Anyone that comes in gets eaten by the looks of things. Bit by bit, getting closer to spiders, my arachnophobia has diminished. It's still there. If there was a spider crawling up my arm, I'd have to flick it off. It's this exposure to spiders has allowed me to get more comfortable and familiar with them. And this is what happens just by following the breath. There's all of the other stuff that's going on, bit by bit by bit, we become more familiar and comfortable with it. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back as well. And you've got to fix your roof in the sunshine. Any practice which has an emotional element to it, 4 rules of meditation, apply them. Let's meditate. And the breath is a distraction to, in a way, all of the other emotions in the body. because it's a neutral experience. So what we're doing is focusing on a neutral experience. Because we can't distinguish between good and bad breaths. Especially if we focus sharply enough on the movement of the breath. So we're not noticing the breathing process. What we're noticing is the movement of the breath through time. Rising, falling. Noticing the breath all the way through the in-breath and all the way through the out-breath. So this is a sharp focus on a tiny period of time within the overall in-breath and within the overall out-breath. And if our mind is constant chatter, we take control of the chattering inner dialogue, the voice that is doing the chattering, and we note the rising and falling of the breath. We're breathing in, saying the mind rising, breathing out, saying the mind falling. Rising, falling. We'll just practice this for the next few minutes, called following the breath. It's important not to try to silence the mind. This is just an exercise in focus. It's important not to try to avoid the mind wandering. It's an exercise in noticing that the mind has wandered. Belly rising, belly falling. Okay, so gently bring your attention to your hands. Just allow yourself to become aware of whatever sensations there are in the hands. And a good way to notice the sensation in the hands is to rub them together like this. And then you do that faster, and faster, faster, until it gets really hot. And you put your hands back down. And you notice the warmth and the tingling and the flow of blood in the hands. You might be aware of the pulse. What we're going to do is scan down the hands, beginning with the wrist. So you bring your attention to the wrist, and as you breathe out, you scan down the hands to the tips of the fingers. And that can be along your palm or along the back of your hand. It's like you've got a tiny little flashlight. You breathe in, you point the flashlight at the wrist, and then as you breathe out, you move it down the hands to the tips of the fingers. Another in-breath, attention on the wrist, down the hands to the tips of the fingers. What we're going to do is an extended de-stress meditation. Breathing in normally, bring your attention to your forearms just below the elbow, and then the same as with the hands, as you breathe out, scan down the forearms to the wrist. Breathing in, attention on the elbow, breathing out, a little flashlight of awareness is moving smoothly and softly and gently down the forearm. Breathing in normally, bringing your attention to your shoulders at the top of the arm and scanning down on the out breath to the elbow. Breathing in, shoulder, breathing out, soft, smooth awareness, movement down the upper arm. Breathing in, bringing your attention to the base of the skull at the back of the neck, and breathing out, scanning down each shoulder muscle down to where the arms are hanging. And it's most useful if you're seated, you place your feet flat on the floor, elbows by the side, head balanced comfortably, and your palms or the back of your hands on your thighs. That's the usual posture. Tongue against the back of the top teeth, gently in contact with the sharp part of the bottom teeth. Breathing in, base of the skull, breathing out. Scanning down the shoulders, and notice that the shoulders naturally drop on the out breath, and they naturally release tension. Breathing in, begin bringing your awareness to the top of your head, the crown of your head, and as you breathe out, scanning down the back of the head, past the back of the ears, down to the sides of the neck. This is like somebody's running their fingers from the top of your head, down the back of your head, each side behind the ears, down to your neck. All on the out breath. And if you can get a sensation from your forehead, then that's fine. But if you can't, if you place the palm of your hand close to your forehead without actually touching it, as if you're just about to slap yourself on the forehead, you just keep that palm there, and you notice the warmth and the tingling as the palm comes into contact with the tiny hairs on the forehead. And then you put your hand back down, and there's coolness, and we're getting physiological feedback from the forehead, and we're breathing in normally and breathing out, releasing whatever tension there is from the forehead on the out breath. And we're going to move down over the face, head balanced comfortably, tongue against the back of the top teeth, gently in contact with the sharp part of the bottom teeth, all designed to help to relax your face. Breathing in normally, breathing out, releasing tension from the eyebrows. The eyes, focusing our attention on the center of the eyeballs as we breathe out. Breathing in normally, breathing out, releasing tension from the cheeks. The mouth and lips. Tongue in contact with the sharp part of the bottom teeth, breathing in normally, breathing out, releasing tension from the jaw. And the throat. And then we want to combine all of that into relaxing the face. So again, this is as if somebody's trailing their fingers down from the crown of your head, over your eyes and cheeks, over your mouth and jaw, down to the throat. Breathing in normally, breathing out, releasing tension, drifting down the face, eyes, jaw, throat. All on the out breath. Back to the shoulders, from the top of the neck and the base of the spine, all on the out breath, releasing tension as you scan down the shoulders. Noticing the rising and falling of the chest, the expansion of the chest and back. And releasing tension from the chest and back on the out breath. This is a similar feeling to allowing our body to slump, but it's not slumping because we're sitting in a balanced posture. But it's that total release of bodily tension. Breathing in normally, releasing tension from the abdomen, the belly, upper belly, all on the out breath. And on the middle of the back, the lower back, just focusing on the lower back, scanning down, all on the out breath. releasing tension from the belly. And then moving round the body, all on the out breath, releasing tension as we go. Releasing tension from the waist, the lower back, the buttocks and hips, and the thighs. Allowing yourself to notice the sensations in the thighs. Feeling of clothing around the thighs, the sensation of the thighs in contact with the chair. And the calves, the ankle, the heel, you're just bringing your attention to the heel and noticing it as you breathe out. Soles of the feet. You can do this one at a time. Notice the sole of the left foot. How does that feel? Scanning along it on the out breath, and the sole of the right foot. Again, scanning along the sole from the heel to the toes, all on the out breath. And noticing how the right toes feel. Focusing more on them during the out breath, and then moving over, focusing on the out breath and the left toes. And the left instep. So this is a flashlight experience. We're in a dark room, there's a flashlight, and we're moving it from one part of the body to the other. Tuning in on that, tuning out on everything else. The right instep. Both of the ankles. Again, the calves scanning down from the knee down to the ankle, very softly and gently. And the thighs. Allowing yourself to be aware of the sensations from the thighs, the clothing, the chair. And scanning down the thighs from the hips to the knee as you breathe out. Doing the left thigh. and then the right thigh. And then moving back round the body, the buttocks and hips. Allowing the entire pelvic girdle to settle down into the chair. Whatever tension that you've learned to apply to your posture, we're learning to let it go. And so at first this can only really be done on the out breath. Allowing your body to settle down into the chair. And then coming back round, noticing the lower back, releasing tension from there. The waist, and the belly. The abdomen. Chest and upper back. And again the shoulders from the top of the neck, base of the skull, and the area behind the jaw on each side. Breathing in normally, breathing out, scanning down to where the arms are hanging, releasing tension on the out breath. From the crown of the head down the back of each side of the head, like two fingers, two hands, trailing down. Tongue in contact with the sharp part of the bottom teeth. And now the front, the face, beginning with the forehead, like two hands trailing down each side of the nose, over the eyes, over the mouth and lips. And then moving down, releasing tension from the shoulders, all on the out breath. The upper arms, the forearms, and scanning down the hands on the out breath from the wrists to the tips of the fingers. And checking in with your posture. Is your body balanced as comfortably as possible? And allow yourself to become aware of the breath wherever you wish. But it's most frictionless for most people to notice the rising and falling of the belly. And again, remembering that we're noticing that tiny little movement. All the way through. From the top of the breath, all the way down to the bottom of the breath. And then all the way up to the top of the breath. And just noticing sound moving through time. There you are in the present moment, moving through time. And whenever you're ready, gently returning your attention to your surroundings. That was somewhere between a de-stress meditation and a full body scan. So the full body scan takes 45 minutes generally. And if people find it difficult fitting in 45 minutes, so which is why I abbreviate it, but I extended it to half an hour, something like that today. That's an interoceptive process, as is noticing the breath. Do less than you can with these in the same way as with every other practice. You know, you're in control. While you're comfortable doing it, you do it. If you're not comfortable, you drop out, you do another meditation. You know, if you've somebody who's got a busy mind and you come in and you're meditating here in the group or online, and the benefits of a meditation begin to drift away, then you do whatever calms your mind the most. You don't worry about following along every single time, but what's happening is your subconscious is aware of the meditation that I'm teaching in the background, and then over time what you'll do is internalize it as your own practice. So you're learning it subconsciously. And gently, and that's the whole thing. It's just subconscious, gentle repetition, same as learning to ride a bike, learning to walk. Meditation is all about dropping out of an individual practice, dropping out of a meditation, and then coming back. It's a cyclical process, cycles. Okay, so that's it for today. Mindfulness and interoception.